Good morning. Good year. Learning as a schus for Shlema Filana Chaye Basarach. Um, we are on at the Mishnah on Daf Pei Yamadav. Emeviin Lemi Beis Hasvolim, Lemi Beis Hashlachim, Lemi Beis Ha'ilam. We're talking about what you could use, what tvua you could use for a mincha. So the Mishnah says you can't take from Beis Hasvolim, which is different pshatim. Either it means from a fertilized. Rashi says the regular Rashi says misada hatricha lezavel, a field that needs to be fertilized. The Rashi Saviyaz misada shetricha lezavel shemel lo nizdavle kol tzarach avninsu kol bereseh kechushin, because maybe it wasn't sufficiently fertilized and therefore we'll have sparser Paris. The tvua won't be good. L'shnachrish hazevel mavish l'kalkal tama Paris. Or else the fertilizer will spoil the smell and taste of the tvua. Beis hashlachim, and not from an irrigated field. Beis hashlachim, an irrigated field is less hardy, it's less robust than a rain-fed field. Beis ha'ilam, when you grow tvua in an orchard, it's also not as good. It's in the shade, or the trees take the nutrients. They may be kosher, but if you do so, it's kosher. Ketzer oisa, how do you do the process of making sure you get very good tvua, either wheat for the shtel lechem or barley for the omer or for any mincha? The wheat and barley need for any mincha. Nora shana rishayna. I think now this is talking about the omer. I don't think it's talking about all menachos. I'm not entirely sure. It's talking about all menachos. Nora shana rishayna. The first year he does a near. Near is a preparatory plowing that they would do before it came time, not during the time when they would always plow before you plant in order to break up the ground. This is breaking up the ground to get rid of any roots that were in it. You did it well before that. So you do that the first year. B'shana shniya zayra. The next year you plant on it. Chaydim lePesach shivim yom. 70 days before Pesach. By doing that, by planting 7 days, 70 days before Pesach, it's going to make a lot of flour. As the Gemara is going to explain, that's the ideal time to get the maximum amount of sun in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, during that time, the sun, as we're going to see, you plant on the south side. The sun is in the south that entire time. It goes from east to west, but it's in the south side of the sky. So those 70 days are the long days that get a lot of sun. How does the person in charge at the Beis Hamikdash, how does he check the soilers to make sure that it's sifted properly? Machnes yada l'soichan. He sticks his hand in it. Allah boy avok. If there's a dust, a very, very fine, dusty flour that comes up, psula achi nafa. He has to sift it to get rid of this dust. The dust is not good. It can't be too fine that it becomes dusty. So he sticks his hand in it, and if it comes up dust, then they have to sift it again to get rid of that dust. The misliya psula. If it became wormy, then it's possible. We said he does a pre-plowing in the first year, and the second year he plants 7 days before Pesach. When it says you do that preparatory plowing in the first year, and then in the second year you plant, does that mean that it requires a second plowing early in the second year? And then you do a zriya, idilma, nira shan rishayna ushniya, zaira beloy nira. Do you do in the first year, according to the first shot, you then do 2 preparatory plowings plus the plowing that you do right before the zriya. The second shot, we're saying that you don't need that extra plowing that's not before planting in the second year. You only do it in the first year. The second year, you just plow right before you plant it. Sakmar Toshma, the Tanya Amriyesi, Afchite Karziyim Bekfar Achem. Also, these places called Chite Karziyim and Kfar Achem, Yamale Smuchas Lushrayim, if they were near Yushalayim, they changed to El Mali, which is without the Aleph, which means if not for the fact, had they been Smuchas Lushrayim, you can only bring, you could have brought, these would be good places, but unfortunately not near Yerushalayim, but they have all the other qualifications. Because you only bring the Aymer element Hamadroimus from the southern facing fields, Hamenurois, Lekach, that are plowed specifically for this. Shebehen Chamazerachas, Obehen Chamashekas. Because on these southern facing fields, the sun rises facing it and it sets facing it. Ketzad Oisa. So what is the process when you have the proper field that is also near Yerushalayim? We said before, we had an earlier Gemara that said the sadus for the Omer had to be near Yerushalayim, and one of the reasons we said in the Gemara before was because in Mavirin ala mitzvah. The other one was I think that it should be, they shouldn't have to go so far with it. Ketzad Oisa, so what would they do? Norishon Rishon, they would plow it in the first year. Ushniya, and the second year, Chayrish, they would plow it. Vishoin, and they would plow it a second time. So you see, like that first shot we had said, they had to have plowed a total of 3 times. You plow it in the first year, and then Vishoin, you repeat it in the second year, and then Chayrish, and then you plow it right before Zriya. Ushniya Chayrish Vishoina. The Zaira, and then you plant Koydem LePesach Shevinyan, 7 days before Pesach. So it should be near the sun, meaning that was the time that there'd be a lot of sun in the south. It would make a stalk that was a zeres long, which was a nice height, and the grains, the ear of grain, would be twice as big as the stalk. So it would be a very fruitful planting. And then they would cut it, and then they would thresh. They would They would pile it up, the dash, and they would thresh it. The zereh, and they would winnow it, and then they would select the grains from the chaff. The teichet, they would grind it up, umarakid, and then they would knead it. Maybe eitzel gizbar. I'm sorry. Marakid is sifted. Or maybe Eitzel Gizbar. They'll bring it to the Gizbar. The Gizbar would check it, like we said in the Mishnah, by sticking his hands in it. If the dust came up in it when he put his hand in, you tell them to go sift it again another time. Instead of the gizber putting his dry hand in it, he would put oil on his hand, and then he would stick his hand in it. By putting his hand with oil in it, that would take out all the dust. So the gizber would really clear it out by himself and make it the ideal flour for the Menachos. So we brought this whole brayza katanimia chayrish v'shain. We said that he would be chayrish, he would plow it, and then he'd go back and plow it again the following year. And then later on, he would be Zaira. He'd be Charish and do it again. He would plow a second time before the Zriya. So this is a raya that you have to plow a total of 3 times, like the first time we had said. You don't get to skip the preparatory plowing the second year. The Gemara says, even according to you, you were asking a question on our Mishnah. Mishnah never said the word Shaina, and we were clearing about what it means. So why would it say Shaina in the Brisa? It's like So it must mean when the Brisa says Shaina, that it could be that the Mishnah is talking about a field that already had been used in the past, so already was plowed. That's the reason why it doesn't need a second plowing. Because it was the point of doing a second preparatory plowing is that the field needs that in order to get it ready. It must have been plowed 2 times before you actually planted it. But if it happened in some previous years, it's not necessary. But while the Bryce is talking about where that hadn't happened. So come on, my hobby Allah. So you said you can't bring a rye from the Bryce because it's talking about specific circumstances where it never been used before. What about a place that had been used in the previous year? What's going to be the din? Tashma Tanya, near Chachia v'Zayra Chachia, near Chachia v'Zayra Chachia. The way we're going to see this brisa, the Gemara is going to be the brisa in great length, but the brisa says that the way they would prepare is they would plow half the field before the plant, not directly before the planting, but earlier in the year. They would do half of it, and half of it would be planted near Chatzia v'Zayra Chatzia, and the other half would be left unplowed. And then the second year, they would leave the part that had been planted in the first year, and they would plant it in the second year. So you do half and half, meaning the idea was not to overuse the field. That's what the Bryce is talking
So
about.
when do you do it 3 times and when do you do it twice?
Well, that was the question. Do you do it 3 times or 2 times?
So kamba
So,
avuda, kamba she'en avuda. So in other words,
so he said when it's avuda, when it had been used previously,
yeah.
then you don't have to do it again a second year. So the Mishnah that said that it could be that it's only in the second year, it's only we're trying to justify that it's possible, or it's not necessarily the case that this brisa proves that you always have to do 2 times in the 2 previous years, plus doing it right before plowing. We're saying it could be that that's not always necessary. If it had been previously plowed, you don't have to do so. So it's not a raya that that's always the case. We're not really sure if this is left sort of hanging. We don't know what the din is. Is that really what the case of the Mishnah is? So now we'll bring a raya. It says that they would just do they would plow half the field and they would plant half of it, meaning planting together with the plowing. But um, so you're saying near. I'm sorry. So the way near you plow it, and chetzia you leave on the side. You don't plant it. V'zarei chetz, and then you plow again and you do the other half of it. But this is all just one time, right? The part that you just did this year.
Meaning you only according to this price, so it's only twice.
Yeah, I mean, they have to explain that it's not even being done. This first Chatzia is not even being done, didn't have been done the previous year. Everyone held at least you had to have plowed it the year before. The question is, you have to do it again the second year. So the Mefarshim explained that the first year's taka you couldn't use, the first half you couldn't use. But even the second year, all we say is that you plow it right before planting the part that had been left unused the first year without a second pre-planting plowing. So this is a raya that you don't need 3 plowings, you just need 2. Amr Rav Yochanan, Ein Revi'in es ha'omer, ela min hasadis hamedudroimes sheberetz Yisrael. You can only use it in the southern-facing fields in Eretz Yisrael. Shebehen cham b'zeirachas. That's where the sun shines on. Mehen cham b'sheikas. That's where the sun rises and sets while facing that field. Tanya nami hachi abashol omer. Omer hayabah mi bikas beis makla. The Omer came from this a field in this valley of Beis Makla, Kabas Gimel Soyin Hoisa. This field was Gimel Soyin, which was a way of measuring the size of the field. Either it means that you would plant seed of 3 saw or produce 3 saw. The Sada Mudramas Haisa, it was a Sada on the south side. The sun would hit it when it was both rising and falling. Near Chatchia v'Zayra Chatchia, near Chatchia v'Zayra Chatchia. And they would plow half of it and plant off of it, and vice versa the following year. And that's what they would use. They would use the half of the second year. Now, one would ask, if you say that Gimel Saw is only if Gimel Saw is the amount of Tvua that is produced, and we had said that you need Gimel Saw for an Eimer earlier, right? Or at least Gimel Saw. One man I think said 5 Saw. But how'd you get Gimel Saw if we only planted half of it? As we're going to see in the Gemara in a minute, this field actually produced double the expected amount. So I think that's the raya that this was very exceptionally productive. Va'avda al chad trey. So it says near chatzia. I'm sorry, near chatzia v'zer chatzia. Rav Chilkiah bar Tuvi havale karna de'ara. Rav Chilkiah bar Tuvi also had such a corner field that he was near chatzia v'zer chatzia, near chatzia v'zer chatzia. He followed this procedure. Va'avda al chad trey. He produced double the expected amount. So that's the explanation, I think, of how you had 3 saw, and according to the Mandama that said Gimel saw is the amount that the field produces. He would sell the wheat produced by this l'smida for Rashi says for the best, the most exceptional flour, most sought after flour. The Mishnah continued, if the flour became moldy or became wormy, it was possible. Ruba psula. Flour that was mostly wormy is possible. Bachit is just ruban psulas, and wheat that most of it became wormy is possible. Does that mean that all of the chitin, if roiv of each kernel got wormy, then it's possible? Or does it mean if most of the kernels became wormy, but not that they all became wormy beroiv? So teku. It's not clear. Boy Rav, Higdishan Maushi Yalakanale. If someone was makdish with these wormy kernels that are not roy to be used, they're possible to be used for a mincha. So you get malchus on it. Mishum Balmum. If someone is Makadish Balmum, he gets malchus. The Torah, there's a law of not to Makadish Balmum. Does this have the same status as a Balmum? Keeping the apostle Balmum. Do we say that since you're not allowed to use this for the Menachos, it's like a Balmum? Balmum is only applicable to behemoths, but not to flour. Teku. It remains a take. Tanan Hasan. Kol Eitzenim Shabbai Talas, apostle Gabi Mizbech. And we just said the Gabi flour. The same thing will hold true Gabi wood that was used to be burnt on the Mizbech. So if there's wormy wood, that's also possible to be brought for the Mizbech. That only applies to moist wood. If you have dry wood, you can scrape away the worms and it's kosher. What's it if you makadish wormy wood? Can you use it for a baal? You can get malchus like as if you brought a baal mum. So keeping the apostle baal mum. Same, really the same question like we had before. Zok the Mishnah. Takua alpha l'shemen. We finished talking about the flour of the mincha. Now we're going to talk about the shemen that was brought for minchas and for the mitzayra. So Takua was a place in Eretz Yisrael. I think it still is the name of a place in Eretz Yisrael. Alpha l'shemen. That produced the best shemen. Abashola Mishniela Regev be'Ever Yadin. Regev was the second best place in Ever Yadin. Kol ha'artzos ha'yuksheris. All places were kosher to bring the shemen from for the Menachos. El Mikana Mevian, but these are the places they brought from. Ein Mevian loy beis hazvalim loy beis hashlochim. Like we said, the Gabi the mincha can't be brought from a fertilized field and not from a irrigated field. Loy min mashin Isru beinei. You also cannot olives. Shemen grows from olives. So before we had said the third option was if you have tfuah that was planted amongst trees. Olives themselves are trees, so you can't bring from olive tree that has tfuah planted amongst it. The same reason that it's going to take away from the nutrients. The mehevi kosher. That would be kosher, but the if you do so. Ein meviin anpakton. You can't bring anpakton, which is the Gemara is going to explain that's olive oil from olives that had not ripened fully, then maybe kosher. If you do so, it's kosher. You can't bring from olives that had been. Rashi says either that they got dirty and then they fell down and then you soak them in water to reinvigorate them, or that they just fell into the they when as they were growing they fell into the dirt. So either means that they were schwach and they needed to be soaked in order to reinvigorate them, or that they fell into puddles and that ruined them. The loy min hakvashim, not from pickled olives, if you squeeze out oil from them, the loy min hashlukim, and not from boiled olives. Them may be possible, but these would be possible. Said Gemara, but Yishlach Yoyev Tekua. Once we mentioned Tekua, there was a place they got good shemen. We bring from a pasuk that Yoyev was David HaMelech's king. He needed someone who was smart, so he sent to Tekua. Vayikach misham isha chachama, and he took one of the women there who was smart. Maishna Tekua. Why did he get a wise woman, a smart woman from Tekua? Shemen Zayis causes people to be smarter. So since they had so much shemen, the people there were smart. Tanarabban, the Toivel b'Shemen Ragla, Zech Chelka Shel Asher. The pasuk says in the brachos, L'Asher Amar Baruch Mibanim Asher. He's going to be benched. You Rotzi Echav. He'll be accepted by his brothers. But Toivel b'Shemen Ragla, and he'll dip his feet in shemen. Zech Chelka Shel Asher. The Gemara says, Shemoishech Shemen K'ma'ayin. It pours out oil like a spring. Amru pamachas nitzchul and anshi lutkia b'shemen. They needed oil. Mina lehen pul mustus echad. They appointed one of their guys, one of their workers. Amuloi lech v'havelanu shemen b'meir rivuya. We needed you to bring 100 rivuya. A rivuya is 10,000. So that equals 1,000,000 manas of oil. Halach Yishalayim, he got Yishalayim, Amalei Leich L'Tzur. They told him, go to Tzur, they'll know what to do. Halach L'Tzur, Amalei Leich L'Gush Chalav. And so they told him to go to Gush Chalav. Halach L'Gush Chalav, he came to Gush Chalav, Amalei Leich Eitza Ploini L'Sada Halaz. I guess Gush Chalav was near Tekaya, I imagine. So go to this guy, L'Sada, to this guy's field. They found him working underneath his olives. They asked him, do you have 110,000 manas of oil that I need? He said, wait until I finish my work. He was busy pruning his olive trees. They waited for him to finish his work. After he finished work, he took his farming implements and threw them over his back. He was going home, and as he went home, he was clearing away skilas, rocks. He was clearing away the rocks doing hard labor on his way home. The guy said to him, do you really have 1,000,000 mana of oil? It seems like the Yidden who sent me here were playing games with me. You don't seem to be a wealthy guy. You're doing a hard labor. When they got to his city, his shifcha brought him a pitcher of hot water. He washed his hands and his feet. They brought him out a kli of a basin of gold that was full of oil. The Tov used that then to be tevel his hands and feet. The Kaim Hashanev b'Shem Ragloi, that in Asher they dip their hands in and they dip their feet in shemen. After they ate and drank, he measured out for them these 1,000,000 manas of oil. And then he said, do you need any more? I've got plenty. We only brought enough to buy 1,000,000. That's plenty. If you need, I'll sell it to you. and I'll come along with you and take the money. You can pay me when we arrive back in Lutkia. Madal Hashem and B'Shmoina Asar Ribuya. He did an additional 18 rivuya, an extra 180,000 mana. Amala hiniach oisei ish leisus leifer ferd gamal chamor be'eretz Yisrael shleisachu. He had to rent every possible mode of conveyance to bring the extra oil with him. Kivin shigil iroi, when he reached his city, yatzu anshi ira lekalsa. They were all very proud of him that he was successful in getting this large quantity of oil. Amlem. You don't need to praise me. This person that came with you, very nice to be in addition to the million that I paid him for, he also lent me, he laid out for me an additional 180,000. The Kaimashanema, yes, Mr. Asher, ain't called the Soishas behind Rav. And the Gemara says, this whole story was just to show that they had a lot of oil in the Asher, and also to teach us something which I have observed, that like you see by Warren Buffett, he drove like the same Buick for 40 years, and he lived in his two-bedroom house. That people who are very wealthy, yes, I'm sorry, yes, Miss Asha, there's some very wealthy people, they don't have anything. They are very into wearing a Rolex and leasing the Maybach, but they don't really own any money, they don't have any assets. And then there's the person who appears to be poor, and he has a great amount. He feels no need to make much of himself. This guy was working hard because that was his. He felt that the important thing is to keep working hard, even though he had a lot of money. We said you can't bring from a basis volim or basis shlochen, and you can't bring ampakton oil, which we said the Gemara is going to explain is oil from unripe olives. We said, but if you do so, we said it's possible. I'm sorry. We said, but it's kosher if you do so. I'm sorry. No, we said in the Mishnah that if you do so, it's possible. So Gemara. But Tanya Amy Vin Ampankton, you can't bring a raktam bin heavy puzzle, Neshu Saraf, because Ampankton oil is not really oil, but it's just something that when you have oil, you have olives that are not ripe, something comes out of it, but it's not really oil. So the Gemara is asking, because at least this is the way some understand it, that our Mishnah said it's a kind of it was listed amongst the oils that are possible, but here we seem to be saying it's not an oil at all. So why would you say it's ampakton oil if it's not oil? Maybe possible neshu sarf because it's sarf, it's not oil. On Rav Yosef lekash Rav Chia Rav Shimon bar Rebbe. Rav Chia Zorakle. Rav Chia would throw it out. He held it wasn't oil at all. Rav Shimon bar Rebbe matval bay. He would taka be toivel in it, like we said. They used to dip their feet in oil or their hands and feet in oil. He would use this shvacha oil for dipping. I guess maybe even dipped his food in it. But it wasn't used for lighting for the real oil uses. So he was like our Mishnah that held it was a kind of oil. We see Manach Hashir Mekamsin. Rav Shimon bar Rebbe was very wealthy. His son Rav Shimon was also wealthy, but he acted as if he was poor by using this weak oil. Shisha Chadashim b'Shemen Hama'or. This is in Megillah, right? That they would Esther, all the women that were brought for the contest for Achashverosh were toivel for 6 months in Shemen Hamar. My Shemen Hamar, what is that? Rav Huna bar Chia Amar Tach Satachta. He said it was Satachta, was a certain kind of oil, a different oil, not olive oil. But Yemei Abba says it's Shemen Zayis that did not produce a third. Tanya, Rebbe Yehuda Aimer, Ampaknon, Shemen Zayis Shlehevi Shlesh. This Shemen Amar is also called Ampaknon because it's Shem and Zayis that didn't go through it. Lam Lamasach and Oisai. What do they smear it on for? Shemasher Saseyum Adanis Abasar. It removes hair and it causes the skin to glow. We said you can't bring from olives that had dragged on the ground, that they were soaked in water, either they fell in a puddle or they were soaked in order to invigorate them. Tanur Rabbanan. Shemen Zayish Kavush Shaluk. Shemen Zayis that was pickled, from an olive that was pickled or that was boiled or soaked. Sharui, or that was left for a long time in water. V'shel Shmarim, or was made from the sediment of olives. V'shel Reach Ra, or that didn't smell good. Lo Yevi. You can't bring it. V'mhevi Pasal. If you bring it, it's going to be Pasal. Boy Rabba Hikdishu Maushi Yalakalav Vishum Bal Mum. Is it, if you bring it, is there Vichai for the lav of as if you brought about Mum? Just like we said by eitzim and by flour, they're the same shaila here. Take what the Gemara says, it remains a question. There are three times that zaysim are harvested. You know what? I'm not going to do this. It's already 7:05. I think we'll let Rafal make it to davening, hopefully. Okay, take care. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank
And
you.
I'll see you
Shabbos.
after Shabbos.
Yeah.